And next, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our best man, Timothy.
Once upon a time, there was a handsome prince who fell in love with a beautiful princess. They were wed, and they lived happily ever after. They're Cliff Notes. Now, that was going to be my speech, but seeing as how I've waited about 20 years to be standing in front of all of you here today, I figured I should probably give you a little more than Cliff Notes. So, what can I say about Katie and Sean? I found I have to be careful when approaching this topic, otherwise people often ask me if I'm from West Virginia. So yes, I consider Sean to be my brother. And yes, Katie is like a sister to me. And yes, I was very confused about which side of the aisle I was supposed to sit on in church today. Luckily, I got to stand. Thanks, Sean. Me and Sean have known each other for longer than either of the two of us can remember. We used to dig foxholes and play Arnie. We played t-ball together. We traded baseball cards. We swapped stories about the different girls in our classes. We trudged through the underground tunnels of Sandy Hook together. We have paddled out into the Navesink Inlet against the current. Yes, me and Sean are as close as two men can possibly be without being gay. Young love aside. So imagine my surprise when my little sister had to come and tell me that my best friend had a crush on our cousin. We were 8 at the time. Yes, Sean and Katie have had a very long history. I've been thoroughly involved in it from the beginning. Take, for instance, the first time Sean decided to ask Katie out. He was 13 years old and he didn't have the nerve to do it himself. So, he asked his best friend to do it. I honestly don't know who it was more awkward for, me having to ask out my cousin, or Katie having to tell me maybe. The hardest part was definitely me trying to explain to Sean what maybe actually meant. Luckily, Sean was persistent. He was 17 years old when he finally got the courage to ask again, and this time Katie said yes. Being his best friend, I helped him plan the date. Unfortunately for me, Sean decided not to tell anybody else about the date, and neither did Katie. So I'm sitting at my Aunt Susan's, Susu's house, while Katie is getting ready for the date I helped plan, and everybody else in the house is trying to figure out who she's going out on a date with. I was completely silent. Doesn't happen very often. Eventually, just about everybody figured out who she was going on the date with, except for Susan. At which point she looked at me and asked me why I wasn't grilling Katie about her date. You see, Brian was away, so that responsibility naturally fell to me. At this point, I was very frustrated with having to keep the secret, and I just blurted out, I can't. I just can't. Susu still didn't get it. So Jenny looked at her mother and says, think, why would Timmy not be able to be overprotective? Oh, Sean Areia? Luckily, Sean and Katie dating didn't change much, at least between the three of us being able to hang out. Well, except for all the confused looks from the rest of my friends who had been introduced to the two of them as my cousins. I swear we're not from West Virginia. Now, no story can attest to the fact that we're as tight as we've ever been at Sean's 21st birthday. Now, I don't want to embarrass Sean too much here, so let's just say Katie now knows what a catheter is. So here we are, celebrating the marriage of Mr. and Mrs. Sean and Katie Areia. About time. So I would like to say, Sean, welcome to the family. And Katie, well, welcome to the family. Now, I've talked a lot about their past, but this speech is really about their future. So let's raise our glasses, and here is to Sean and Katie's happily ever after. I did it without crying.
We don't call him the best man for nothing. That's Tim. Give him a big round of applause. Nice job, Timmy.